Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. From ants to bees and from cedar apple rust to cotton. Today is all questions and answers. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Goodwin's Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Over the past few months, we have received lots of viewer questions. Every week, my guests and I try to answer all of the questions you sent in, but we don't always have the time to show you those answers on TV. So today, we're going to show you all the Q&As that haven't made it on air yet. What is a good edible shrub that I can plant to use as a screen, Miss Carol? And this is something that we actually pondered. So what do you think about that one? Good question. You know, what I hadn't heard before.
It is. And of course, when I think of screens, I normally think of evergreen shrubs, and there's not a lot of evergreen shrubs that are going to provide edible. I couldn't come up with any, except maybe some things that actually might have some herbal use, like juniper berries. But, and I also didn't tell us whether it's sun or shade.
True.
So people need to, I wish when people, let's just say that, when they send in their questions, please give us a little bit about the cultural conditions. But if it's plenty of sun, I don't know how much room they have, but they might want to do some kind of structure and do some espaliered fruit. Might be fun. Or a fence with some vines. Vines would make a good screen.
Would be good.
Muscadines would be a good option for us in this area. Hardy kiwi is another good vine. Could be very, very vigorous. Blackberries, if they don't want anybody to come through.
Right,
real
the
thorny ones, although they all have also have thornless ones. Blueberries could be a smaller hedge. You know, we have some problems now with some new pests on blueberries, and the soil needs to be really good for blueberries. It has to be acid and well drained. So that's just some thoughts on it, but not a whole lot of good options.
Okay. Good question.
That's a good question.
All right. I am thinking about getting rid of my Bermuda and going with zoysia. How much sun do I need to grow a good stand of zoysia? And guess what? We just so happen to have our lawn guy here today. So Booker, what say you?
I said he's doing a good thing if he can. No, that's a really good thing to get rid of Bermuda grass and put zoysia. Cause I like zoysia grass. Zoysia grass is really pretty good grass.
Oh yeah.
You know, carpet grass.
Yeah,
you know.
it's like carpet.
Now it do need sun too, at least by 6 hours sun.
Okay, at least by 6.
Now if you get a palisade, they said palisade to do good in 4 hours of sun.
Okay.
So now if you got a little shaded area you want to put that zoysia in, I probably go with a palisade. You know, that's do good in little shade.
Okay.
But yeah, you can change your Bermuda grass out and put that zoysia down. You know, it's gonna look good. You don't have a pretty lawn. You can have a pretty thick turf. It won't get into your flower bed so fast. You know, don't run like Bermuda grass and everything.
That's right.
So yeah, you can sod it out now. This would be a good time. Now, if you don't sod it out, one thing you might want to do before you lay your sod down on the new ground, if it's been real hot, you might want to kind of water the ground first. Get it kind of moist, but you don't want to lay that sod on that hot soil right then. So you might want to water down real good, maybe a night before, then lay your sod out there.
Okay.
But yeah, and also you do that soil test while you got it out there.
Yeah.
If you need to add lime to it, that's a good time to add that lime to it right then.
Okay.
But you go ahead and sing that Bermuda grass and put that zoysia down.
Put that zoysia in there? Now what do you have at home?
I have Bermuda grass, and I also have a little spot of zoysia.
Oh, so you have a little spot.
Yeah, a little spot of zoysia. And the zoysia do really look good though. And,
okay.
And when I have zoysia grass, when I removed that tree I talking about, and they didn't have no Bermuda grass in, so I just put that zoysia in there, and it really look good. If I do it again, I do zoysia too, Mike.
You do zoysia?
Which one is out competing the others? Bermuda trying to take over the zoysia, or is the zoysia trying to take over the Bermuda?
This old period of time, the zoysia really tried to take over the Bermuda grass there. It's
pretty tough.
That's probably what you want, though.
Yeah. But it's not going to do neither one right now.
No.
What can you recommend for a low growing ground cover? We don't know the conditions, so what if we had full sun?
If it were full sun, I'm always into mixes. I don't like to go with a monostand. I like things I can kind of control that are not too aggressive, because you can't grow anything else there if you put in something that's very aggressive. So I might go with some of the low-growing sedums, for example. The little Chinese sedum I like Angelina a lot. Some of the herbs are good, oregano or thyme. If the drainage is real good, they like the soil a little bit sweet. Some of the dianthus would be good. And give you a little difference in texture and composition and bloom times. The Phlox subulata, the one that's blooming right now, the little low-growing ground cover phlox, the thrift they call it, is another one.
Very pretty. Well, I was thinking, you know, for shade, you got ajuga, dwarf mondo grass is nice, and yeah, there's a lot of different options for ground covers.
The dwarf golden sweet, creeping Jenny, or the dwarf golden sweet flag. Which is
that's pretty.
Grass.
I love
grass-like. It's not a grass, but it doesn't run too fast. It looks good in January. It's awesome.
What about could you do daylilies if you had full sun? Would that be considered?
Yeah,
sure.
Kind of low ground cover, I guess.
It's not that low.
It's not that low.
But it does a good job of crowding out weeds. Daylilies actually discourage other plants from growing nearby.
Okay. What kind of soils would you need for low-growing plants? Would it matter? Would you have to amend the soils or anything like that, or?
Very possibly. Some of the ones that I mentioned, for example, the dianthus or the thyme, would require very sharp drainage, and they would also prefer it to be a little bit on the sweet side. So if it's too acid, they probably would not thrive.
Okay. Get your soil tested.
Yeah.
That'll take care of that.
I heard Mr. D talk about fruit tree care. My question is, 1, when is the best time to plant fruit trees? And 2, how do I prepare the soil for planting? Good question.
It's a very good question. Very good question. Now is not the time. Now is not the best time to plant fruit trees. In my opinion, the best time to plant fruit trees is in the late winter.
Okay.
Late winter. You know, March is a real good time. You know, February, March, early April.
Okay.
If you get into May, it's too late, and even you know, mid-April, in my opinion, is too late. And I've done this with fruit trees. I've done this with peach trees, and we would plant them at the right time, and then we'd have some planted in May, and the May planting trees didn't thrive like the others did. They had more bacterial spot. They had more fungal diseases. They were just stressed. I think they were stressed from the late planting date, and that increased the other problems that they had. So the best time to plant is late winter. Just kind of keep that in mind.
Okay.
You know, and I say late winter. If you don't want to plant them in the middle of the winter when you're still having real hard freezes, because you know, a hard freeze can take one out.
Okay.
And as far as preparing your soil, now is the time. Now is the time to pull a soil, to do a soil test where you plan to plant your fruit trees.
Okay.
Go ahead and pull a soil sample, and you have your soil analyzed, and then you put on that the code, the fruit tree code of what you're going to plant. And if you're going to plant several fruit trees, make sure you have all of them listed. And you want to be sure that you go ahead and lime to get the pH up to the point where it needs to be. Most fruit trees like a pH of around 6.5, pretty high pH. So you're probably going to have to add lime. But go on and get that out there, and then, I would probably, control weeds in that area throughout the summer, and then, in the wintertime, go ahead and, make sure that you've got everything done, and in late winter, stick them in the ground.
And that'll be it?
Yep.
Okay.
What is the best kind of mulch to use in your flower bed? So what do y'all think about that one?
Anything organic and non-matting. It can be cheap stuff, pine straw, leaves from your tree. It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Okay.
Right, shredded bark. I love pine straw. Pine straw is one of my favorites because I can shove the whole bales in the back of my little Honda CR-V. Don't have to go rent a truck to haul mulch or anything. It's a really good one. But any kind of shredded bark and leaves, I go around and steal leaves out of neighborhoods sometimes. And if you want to, you can chop them up first by running your mower over them a little bit to make them look better. But yeah.
Okay. So those are good organic mulches, something that can be used by the plants later. Okay.
Can I grow cotton in my home garden?
Very
That's
good
another
question.
good question.
Very good question.
Oh, that.
At one time you could. At one time it was no problem. But then a little thing called the boll weevil eradication program happened. I I lived through that boll weevil eradication program when I worked in Mobile, and then in '95 I moved to Tennessee. Right. About the same time the boll weevil eradication program hit Tennessee. So I had
Did you move it up?
Okay. I lived through it twice.
Okay.
And that is, the boll weevil eradication program is an example of a success story where the United States Department of Agriculture, cooperating with local state departments of agriculture and local officials, were able to successfully eradicate the boll weevil. The boll weevil was one of the #1 pests in cotton production. They've been able to do that, and they did it, they sprayed malathion on the cotton. The boll weevil has one host plant. Yeah. Its only host plant is cotton. And even though we have quite a bit of cotton, the percentage of cotton acreage is, compared to all the acreage in a county, is very, very small. So they were able to completely, and we have eradicated the boll weevil from Tennessee. However, because that boll weevil is a prolific critter, it can come back. And hundreds of thousands. How many boll weevils did you say?
One pair of boll weevils has 12 million offsprings in one growing season.
Okay.
Think about that for a second.
You can see we can get reinfested very easily.
Very easily.
And for that reason, it's not recommended that you grow cotton in your landscape. I mean, Peabody Hotel used to have cotton in their flower bed out front.
Okay.
And when the boll weevil eradication program came in, they continued to have cotton, but they also had a boll weevil trap there.
Right.
So if you want to grow cotton in your garden or anywhere, if you want to grow cotton, you need to contact the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, and you need to let them know that or ask for permission. They may, if they say yes, well, they're probably not. Yeah. But if they say yes, they're going to say, okay, we're going to have to trap it. We're going to have to put a trap out there. You're going to have to give us access to your property to come in every so often and check that trap to see if we've caught any boll weevils. It's a pheromone trap that attracts the male boll weevil. And there may be a charge. I know farmers still have to pay, I think, in some states, $35 an acre that they have to pay for this continuous monitoring program. I mean, they used to have boll weevil traps all around cotton fields. Now they will have the trap out on the road, one trap per cotton field, or if there are several cotton fields in an area, it may be one trap per mile or something like that. But they will go out there and they'll check those traps. So to answer your question, it's not a good idea, and you probably ought to get permission or seek permission.
From TDA.
Tennessee Department of Agriculture.
That's right.
There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. This week, we are catching up on answering viewer questions. These are the questions we had to cut for time from our Q&As this season, but they were good questions and we've got your answers.
Are there any updates on controlling the crepe myrtle bark scale? Guess what I have here? And it's actually covered.
That doesn't look good at all.
Yeah, I mean, you can just see it.
If we could teach spiders to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of these critters,
not so much into the scale.
This is what I've been telling folks, because there's been an outbreak, of the crepe myrtle bark scales, Germantown, I've seen it in Cordova, Collierville. Throughout Shelby County, I've gotten calls from Fayette County. So they're pretty much all over the place. Yeah. It's here, and it's going to be here for a while. The first thing that I recommend is this. Get out your power washer, pressure washer. If you don't have that, a hose, nozzle. Wash off as many of the scales as you possibly can, okay? Do that first, then treat it with a product that contains imidacloprid, okay? Read and follow the label on that. Bayer Advanced Tree and Shrub Protecting Feed is an example of said product that contains imidacloprid, okay? It's a soil drench. It comes in a liquid form, comes in a granular form, okay? Goes down at the base of the plant, right around the root system. The roots will take it up systemically. Okay. That will give you a control. 12 months residual is what we're talking about.
That's pretty
12
good.
months. Okay. But something else I've added as well. I think in the fall, when the leaves fall off, you should go out and scalp your tree, your crepe myrtles, because it'd be easier to see your bark when the leaves fall off. If you have any scales on there at that point in time, pull out the water, wash it off, okay? I would come back again in the spring. So I'm talking late winter, early spring, before it leaves out, blow them off again. And actually at that time, a dormant oil application actually has some merit. But the most important thing is to wash the scales off before you do any treatment.
That's how they overwinter. They overwinter on the bark?
On the bark. On the bark.
What should you do with the dead branches you clip off and the dead leaves you remove? Should you compost them or
I
solid
would not
waste?
compost that, and I'm glad you brought that up. Don't compost that, throw it in the trash. Mr. D always say double bag it and throw it in the trash. But this is an outbreak. We've been seeing it everywhere. And I know a lot of people don't like the imidacloprid, which is the neonicotinoids. Look, it's legal. It is effective. It is what our state specialists recommend. Dr. Hale, I actually talked to him recently about this. If you don't want to go that route, there's some insect growth regulators out there that you could use, but they have not been tested for the crepe myrtle bark scales. So it's going to be up to you, to figure out how you want to control it from that point.
You got to decide whether you want crepe myrtles or
That's
not.
right.
And there are a number of native species that make fabulous substitutes.
There you go. So this has been a huge problem. And it's not just Tennessee, but it's all over the place.
And the problem is it doesn't kill your crepe myrtle, it just makes it look ugly.
Right, and everybody calls because they see the black trunks. Of course, that's the city mold, because these are soft body scales, okay? They're sap suckers. So of course the sap runs through their bodies. Out of the other end comes the honeydew that we talk about. The fungus city mold likes to grow on that honeydew, therefore the black trunks.
So it won't kill the plant? Because I know
if the plant is already stressed, is what I tell folks, I think there's a chance that it may knock it out. If the plant is already stressed. So if you have it in a bad location, poor drainage, things like that, I think it will, because it's already stressed. Here's our next one. What is the best way to control carpenter bees? And that one seems to crop up every now and then, Mr. D. It's probably somebody with a wooden deck or, some wooden pieces out in their landscape.
Yeah, anybody that's got a shop outside that's got exposed wood, they like bare wood. All they're doing is burrowing a hole where the female can go in and lay eggs. But it can really be a problem. It weakens your wood. And on our old farm up in Dyer County, Tennessee, the old barns have been standing for years and years, and the carpenter bees get in there every year. They're buzzing around all summer long, and the barn hadn't fallen yet. Oh wow! But in a household, home situation, you can spray with a insecticide that has some residual. If you can get hold of chlorpyrifos, I see it's still on the labels. If you can get a hold of that. And the commercial guys can, you can put that out and it'll give you some residual. But the pyrethrins, the bifenthrin, those type, of insecticides that you can spray and try to direct the spray in the holes. That will give you some relief. If it's just a few holes, you can take dust, like 5% 7 dust, and kind of puff that up in there using a syringe or something, or some way to get it up in the hole. And you can do that, and if you just have a few, you can actually find some dowels that are the same diameter of the holes, and the holes are pretty much perfectly round.
They are, they sure are.
You
can cut them, a ½ inch long, and coat them with Elmer's or glue or wood putty, and plug the holes up, and that'll do the trick too. But
and that's probably what most people want to do, because they want to protect, all our bees.
Right.
Yeah, so they probably want to do that.
Well, those are several things that you can do, but you might want to consider getting a good coat of stain or a good coat of paint over where the problem is, and that might help repel them a little bit.
Okay. What is the orange gel that I'm seeing on my cedar tree? It is coming out of this small ball-like structure that is on one of the branches. And we know what that is, don't we, Mr. D?
That is cedar apple rust. Beautiful UT orange gel that comes out once a year. And it's an interesting organism. It's a fungal organism that spends part of its life cycle on a cedar tree and part of its life cycle on an apple tree. And the cedar trees, it's kind of a big purple ball that a lot of folks think are cedar seeds, but they're not cedar seeds. And when it erupts into this orange, you know, gel type area, that will dry up and release spores, thousands of spores that the wind will carry to apple trees. It can be crab apples or, you know, ornamental, you know, apple types or your commercial apples, and there'll be bright orange spots on the leaves of the apple trees, and they will sporulate and release spores that the wind will blow back to the cedar tree, and it just goes back and forth. Now, it's not going to kill your cedar trees. It's not going to kill your apple trees. If you follow a regular fruit, you know, home orchard spray schedule on your apple trees, it'll take care of that. You may not even see those orange spots on your apple trees. But we have crab apples out in the front at Agri Center.
Yeah, the Agri Center, right.
I've been to some of the meetings there, and people walk in with a crab apple leaf. What in the world is this?
Yeah.
And it's got the beautiful orange spots, beautiful UT orange spots on them.
Very pronounced,
And,
they really are.
But that's just cedar apple rust.
Cedar apple rust, how about that? Corn earworm destroyed some of my corn last year. How do I control them this year so they will not be a problem for me this summer? Corn earworm.
BT sweet corn. Have you heard of BT sweet corn?
I haven't heard of BT sweet corn yet.
There
Until now.
There is BT sweet corn that is labeled that you can get. I had some last year. We grew a plot out at Agri Center, and it was most excellent. That's what I would do.
Okay.
I would try to find some that's BT. You know, it's a genetically modified organism that you don't have to worry about corn earworms as much unless you really plant them late in the year. I don't think I saw any on our test plot this past year. But you can spray with the pyrethroids. Bifenthrin is one of the insecticides that's recommended, but you have to spray regularly. If you go with a susceptible, you know, variety that will get the corn earworm, and you can try to choose varieties that have a real tight shuck, and toward, you know, some varieties kind of expose the tip of the ear a little bit, and those are more, they receive a lot more damage than the others that are real tight. But use the insecticide every 3 to 5 days, spraying the tips of the ear, and you can keep that from happening. Plant early. The earlier you plant, the better off you're going to be.
So the earlier you plant.
But BT sweet corn is the way to go, in my opinion. And there's several varieties that have that technology.
It must be good. Look at he's grinning.
Yeah.
He must like that.
No, they're
Have
good.
to try that next time.
Yeah. Sounds good. I like corn too. It's good. I have some huge ant mounds near the curb by the mailbox. Why are some mounds larger than others? That's a good question.
It is a good question.
That is a real good question.
And probably we're talking about fire ants.
Fire ants, I'm sure. There are a lot out there now.
Yep, there are a lot of them out there. Most of the time, the size of a mound is, well, it has to do with the number of fire ants in the mound to some extent, but most of the time it's simply a function of how much moisture is in the ground. Fire ants use that mound as a way to regulate the humidity and temperature for the brood. And if it's really wet, you know, conditions, they will raise that mound up higher to get it out of the moisture. In the middle of July, when it's hot and dry, you'll almost not see a mound. It'll be, the brood will be carried deeper where there's, you know, more moisture and it's not quite as hot. You know, it can actually get too hot for the brood. But, you know, if you've just got 1 or 2 mounds there by your mailbox, if you go by there every day and kick them, they'll move. They'll move. Just don't stand there.
Yeah.
You kick them, but they don't like to be bothered.
All right.
And you can do that, and that's why they're by them up against the curb, because the lawnmower doesn't bother them, and you know, you'll see them around telephone poles and around telephone boxes and things like that, because usually nobody bothers them there.
And your explanation about the large mounds makes sense because we've had a lot of moisture here lately. So you're seeing these huge mounds above the ground.
Yeah, they're getting them
Like
out of
mini
the water.
volcanoes. Yeah, just all over the place.
Larvae can drown too, so you got to get them out of the water.
Remember, we love to hear from you. send us a letter or an email with your gardening questions. Send your email to familyplot@wkno.org. The mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. That's all we have time for today. Hope you enjoyed all those answers. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next time for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.